Welcome back, everyone, to another Dust Monkey First Impressions of an early access game. Today, we are jumping into what is, in my opinion, the best game to come out to unseat Among Us as the ultimate game that will make you question everything you think you know about your friends, family, and pets. Dread Hunger is currently in early access at £19.45 on the Steam store. And in the words of the developers, it is a 8-player game of survival and betrayal. Explorers path their ship through the unforgiving Arctic. Among the crew, 2 traitors call on dark powers to undermine them. So is it a very similar formula if you've ever played Among Us or Unfortunate Spacemen? A bunch of players have a mission. In this instance, that mission is to get a ship that is trapped in the ice out of the ice, and 2 people have to work to try and stop them. Now, this game is in early access. I think it came in early access in January sort of time. They originally said 6 to 8 month development until coming out of early access. However, as part of the early access sort of pathway they've set out for new content, they are currently on update 2 out of 5. So I do not know if they're still going to release this this year or early next year. But either way, that is the current state of the game. There are 4 maps you can play. There's the Approach and the Summit, which are the 2 main maps. And then there is the Isle, which is a tutorial. Now, the Isle as a tutorial doesn't really function as a tutorial the way it should, because in order to really understand this game, you need 8 people. You need it to run like a real game. And the Isle doesn't have NPCs. It has players. So unless you find other players willing to do the tutorial at the same time as you, most of the gameplay aspects you can't really learn or get to grips with until you actually go and play a game. And then you have to hope that there are players in there who are willing to explain it to you, or you go and watch a video on YouTube. There's loads of videos on YouTube explaining how the game works. So before we get into any of the gameplay, to show you how that looks, we'll go into the settings. Now, this game, having voice in this game is critical in exactly the same way as Among Us, because a lot of the time you are going to be trying to convince people either that you are one of the good guys, because you are, and maybe someone has falsely accused you, or you are one of the 2 people trying to work to stop the ship from getting to where it needs to get, in which case you are trying to convince them that you aren't suspicious and that actually you are a good guy, while of course you do everything in your power to fuck them over. In terms of graphical settings, everything you'd expect to see is here. View distance, anti-aliasing, post-processing, shadows, textures, effects, motion blur, bloom, field of view. I have everything on Epic, but I am running a 3090. And I've got to say, this game runs incredibly smoothly. I've never had any problems, and I have been playing this game on and off for the last, 2 months now. So here is where one of the problems starts. Getting into a game. Now, the game, despite being played by some fairly big names on Twitch and on YouTube, it hasn't really taken off. So, for example, if I go to the Approach is the first map they released. If I want to play a game right now, I can't. There's no game for me to join. I can start my own game, but you have to have 8 people before the game lets you start. You can't start with 6. You have to have 8. So, again, if I wanted to play the Approach right now, I couldn't. And equally, if you're a new player to this game, you cannot play the new map until you have not only completed, but successfully won the Approach 3 times. So that is going to be a problem if you're brand new to this, wanting to jump in, wanting to play, and you are going to spend a lot of time sitting, waiting for a game to start. Even on the Summit, which we have here, there's only 2 games available, and one of them's in Russian. So we have 1 English server available for us to join, and it's at 4 out of 8. So I will go and join that. So we will make it 5 out of 8, but the game still can't start until we have 8 people. Now, when you get into the actual ship itself, you have a decision to make, and that is what your role on the ship is going to be. The roles available are all sort of the typical roles you'd expect to see on a ship at the time, and each one has its own slight nuances. So each one has its slight advantage. As you can see up here, the Hunter, for example, harvests raw meat 10% faster. Now, the more you play a level, the more you level them up. As you can see, I've got Hunter to level 10. The more you level them up, the more that passive that passive bonus increases. So I've never played the navigator, and the navigator runs 1% faster. Now, if I leveled that up, that would be 10% faster. I tend to play as a Royal Marine or the Hunter because historically, before the recent update, the Hunter started with an axe. And I found the axe fantastic because the axe tends to kill stuff much faster than any other melee weapon. The hunter now has a bow because they've changed the hunter to be a female Inuit, which is a reference to Lady Silence in the Terror, which is an amazing book and TV show which this game heavily borrows from. We're going to go with the Doctor. Now, before you get onto the ship properly, there is a bit of a general like crew staging area, which is the ship itself. And obviously here we are in England. We have not yet sailed for the Arctic. We're sort of chilling out over here. Voice is active the minute you start the game. So sometimes this area is a good area to sort of figure out the overall vibe of the other people in the server. I have had a few instances of heavily toxic players in the game, so much so that, I mean, it really put me off playing for a while. But those have been the minority, not the majority. But they were just so bad that they honestly stopped me and some people I was playing with at the time from touching the game for a good 2 weeks. It was that bad. But that isn't a reflection of the community. The community on the Discord for this game is fantastic. The devs are very responsive to feedback. They are very clear that they are anti toxic players, trolling players, etc., which is fantastic. So we basically, this is the time where the game has its flaw due to the small player base. I have sat on this screen waiting for 8 players for up to half an hour, and realistically, there's not much that can be done to change that until the game's community starts to grow. So if you are looking at this game something to play, bear in mind it's not really a game you can quickly jump into a game and jump out if you have half an hour free. It will take a bit longer than that depending on how quickly you can find people to play with. So another feature of this game is once you have the 8 players and you load into an actual server, there is always a game of cards before the game. Now, the purpose of this really is to make sure that people with different internet speeds all load in at the same time. No one has a disadvantage or an advantage. But also, whoever wins the game of cards gets a captain's key. Now, the captain's key opens a locker in the captain's quarters, inside of which are randomly generated additional assets. So you could find yourself a flintlock pistol, you could find yourself a lump of coal, you could find yourself some food. It's completely varied, but it does mean it's a nice little touch. It means whoever wins the game of cards does start the game with a little bit of advantage over the other players, depending on what's in the box. The first thing everyone has to do, everyone has a single piece of coal. That piece of coal has to go into the boiler, and the coal is used obviously as fuel to get the ship moving along. And so basically, if you're not a thrall, which means you're not working to sink the ship or kill the crew, your main goal, once the ship gets moving to land, is to run around and find as much coal as possible, bring it back to the ship, and get the ship to the end of the ice flow. At the end of the ice flow on both maps that currently exist is a massive iceberg, essentially, that cannot be moved by any means other than going to get nitroglycerin and then detonating it, blowing it up. So that, in many ways, that's one of the downsides currently, in that there are 2 maps, and really the only way to get the ship out into open water again is the same on each map. It's completely reliant on going to get nitroglycerin, and the nitroglycerin on both maps is always in exactly the same place, which means that experienced players can go and get nitroglycerin in the first day of the game. Now, the game is set in a 3-day period. At the end of the 3rd day, a massive winter storm arrives, and if anyone's still alive at that point, they are killed. So if the ship is not out of the ice at that point, then you have failed. If you are a thrall and the ship is not out of the ice at that point, then you have succeeded. You can, of course, succeed or fail before the 3 days, but the 3 days is the game's sort of like hard timer. So again, one of the things, the main thing you have to do in this game, you cannot sit in the ship. Sitting in the ship does nothing. You have to run around and gather supplies. Supplies vary. Other than the coal for the ship, you can also get food, which you have to have. So if you look at the bottom left, you will see there are 3 different counters there. One has a symbol for meat, that is your hunger counter. One has a symbol for fire, that is your heat counter. And one has a heart, which is your overall health. If your food counter or heat counter ever get to 0, then you will start losing health because you are starving and or dying of low temperature. So the way of increasing the food is to go and eat food. Do not. So one of the ways you can get food is you can find human remains and you can cook those and eat them. Although doing that tends to get the suspicion of your crewmates if they see you doing it. You can go and find seals, wolves, or even polar bears, kill them for their meat, cook it, and then eat it. If you eat it raw, you will get sick. You don't want to jump in the water. Jumping in the water massively decreases your heat counter, and when the heat counter gets to 0 again, you will start to lose health and die. The way to mitigate that is you want to go and do this. You want to smash up a box, get some wood, go either back to your ship or back to one of the existing wrecks from previous expeditions, start a fire. When you are near a fire, you will see your heat increases, and of course the only way of cooking anything is on a fire. So that is also how you go and get yourself, back up to full warmth, back up to full health, and from there you can start regenerating health and going on about your day in the Arctic tundra. So again, I mentioned at the beginning that every single class starts with their own unique items. So I'm a doctor. I start with a cleaver because people need their limbs cutting off apparently, and I start off with a injection which will improve someone's health. Every single class has different items, but not having the items at the start doesn't mean you can't get them. If you get the right raw materials, you can go into a ship like here, and you will see that you can put things in here, or even keep it in your inventory, and you can build anything you need. So you can build a flintlock pistol, you can build yourself some flintlock ammunition, gunpowder, wood axe, cleaver, etc. Any item in the game you can find and build here. Now this, which you can see right here, I'll be back over there for you, which is their bone charm. That is what the thralls need to use their dark magic. They have a variety of spells they can cast, which hamper the players either by blinding them with a Arctic tundra, summoning some sort of cannibal 28 days later style zombies that run around and attack whichever player you've targeted them to attack, or you can use a spirit walk, which essentially allows you to sort of free roam around the map very quickly and no one can see you. So it does allow you to very quickly get around the map, and no one will have any idea how you did it. So overall, this game, I mean, visually, as you can see, I mean, I think this game looks fantastic. It's very unique. The games it will be put up against are Among Us and Unfortunate Spacemen. Both of those are very different, but both of those are based in space. So visually, those games share some commonality in terms of theme, although, of course, one is a sort of cartoony, sort of top-down run around game, and the other one is an FPS. Now, this one, of course, is first person only, but the setting, I find the setting for this game is phenomenal. I mean, it's clearly based on the doomed Franklin expedition. It's clearly based on the book and TV show The Terror, which, of course, in turn were inspired by the Franklin expedition. If you know nothing about the Franklin expedition or the book or TV show I just mentioned, go and look them up. They are very, very interesting. The TV show is fantastically well done. And the Franklin expedition is a very, very interesting note in Victorian the Great North Passage expeditions and how fucking often those went horribly wrong. Anyway, so in my opinion, I think this game's fantastic. The biggest drawback of this game is you cannot play a game without 8 people. And given the small community right now, that is a massive hindrance. And also the fact that once you know the map, it's very easy for experienced players to absolutely dominate over someone who's playing for the first time. And there doesn't really seem to be many ways to mitigate against that. I mean, and also you can make the argument that in any game, a veteran will have an advantage over someone who's new. But this game, I find it does lean a little bit too deeply into the advantage for the person who knows the map well, especially if they are a thrall and they know the map well, because again, the only way of getting the ship out is to go and blow up the iceberg. There's only one way to blow up the iceberg, and the stuff you need to do it is always in the same place. So if you are an experienced thrall, you can very quickly go and camp that spot. And you can shoot the nitro as the players try and come and get it, which will detonate it and will kill anyone nearby. Now, when you die in this game, here's a very important note. This is something they added in the alpha. Is you essentially have 2 lives. So when you die, you get put in the brig, and you can see there were 8 spaces in the brig for 8 players. So once you're in the brig, you can be let out, but only by someone who has a key. Keys are found randomly around the map. You cannot make a key. You can only find keys. So again, the key to getting out of the brig is your ability to convince someone. Again, it's not really a downside of the game. It's sort of by design. Some people, if you're in the brig, they will never let you out. Because if you're in the brig, it eliminates either a suspect or it eliminates a thrall. But either way, it's in their way of playing, it's in their best interest to keep as many people in the brig as possible until such time as it becomes very obvious that the two thralls are not in the brig, and then they might get let out. But other than that, I mean, I have had games where, I died from my own stupidity at the beginning of the game. Like right now, I'm about to die from, I'm out at night. My heat is completely gone, and I'm now being chased by a bear. So I'm about to die because of my own stupidity. So when this happens, I will go to the brig. And I'm going to let myself die now to go to the brig. I will go to the brig, and then players will come along, see me in the brig, and then it's down to me to convince them, like, hey, I was killed by a polar bear out there. Can you let me out, please? Now, they may choose not to. They may decide, you know what? I don't believe you. And that's when the game can get very dull very fast, depending on how other people are playing. As you can see, I managed to crawl to a bed, but the polar bear said, I don't give a fuck that you crawled to a bed. If you crawl to a bed when you're downed, you can regenerate and then get out again. But the polar bear decided, I don't give a fuck how tired you are. I'm going to eat you. So I am now in the brig. And now you are in the brig until a player comes back and lets you out. And I mean, a player might come back and they haven't got a key and they can't let you out, or they don't want to let you out, or they don't trust you. So if you die early on, you do sometimes run the risk of being stuck for up to half an hour. But overall, what are my first impressions of this game? I honestly think this game has legs. I really hope that they continue to add content to it. They do have a roadmap. They do have 3 more updates that they want to add before it goes into full release out of early access. It is available on Steam right now. I would strongly suggest people do give this game a look. I think it is massively overlooked right now. In my opinion, it plays in a much deeper, richer way than Among Us or Unfortunate Spacemen, which are the games to hold it up against. But what do you guys think? Like, you've just watched this video. What are your impressions of this game? Is it something you're interested in? Do you like the setting, or is the setting being so unique actually a counterpoint to it? I would love to know more. As always, guys, if you like the video, like, comment, and subscribe. And the next video that we will be covering, well, stay tuned and find out.